Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Jyoti Prasad Chatterjee, Associate Professor in Sociology, Barakpur Rashtraguru Surendranath College, West Bengal, India. Today I will be talking on farmers' movement in India. This is a module under the paper Social Movements in India. Uh, I'll be talking on this issue because farmers' movement has been very interesting and important emerging trend in Indian society. Uh, Often we confuse it with the long tradition of peasant movements in India, but there are certain differences. I mean, fundamental differences between these two types of movement. The peasant movements and farmer movements are fundamentally different, and through this module, I will be trying to locate those differences, how far those differences are justifiable, or whether that differences can be taken for a close sociological scrutiny. So, scholars, there have been scholars, researchers, and social analysts uh, who are divided, as I have already mentioned, that what is the conflict core of the farmers movement that makes it different from the peasant movement, that I'll be trying to locate. Then scholars try to see in it a continuation. There are a group of scholars or a cross section of researchers who try to see in the farmers movement a continuation of the trend of the peasant movements, I mean earlier peasant movements, whether others consider or others find a disjuncture that the peasant movements and the farmers movement, there is a kind of fundamental disjuncture which I was trying to mention, and what this module try to explore, that where is that disjuncture, how far that disjuncture can be located sociologically, is there any fundamental difference. So that disjuncture or study of that disjuncture is very important. We should be able to locate the differences between these apparently similar type of movements, peasant movements and farmers movements, but we must be, I mean, conscious about their differences. Here, focus naturally will be on these orientations. I mean, those consider it as a continuation of the peasant movement, I mean, the farmers movement as a continuation of the earlier peasant movements, or those who try to or who finds out fundamental differences or disjunctures between these two forms of movements. So what is the basic question is, what is the nature of the conflict core of the farmers movement, or basically what characterizes the farmers movement? It emerged in the 1970s and has been continuing since then, and got further momentum in 1980s. Farmers movement in India has exposed, I mean, has revealed, bring into force certain new or emerging contradictions of Indian agrarian society. So, what are those emerging or newer contradictions of the Indian agrarian society that we should be focusing upon? The earlier mobilizations of the small and marginal peasants, that is the term, that is the small and marginal peasants, they were the major players of the earlier peasant movements, and their confrontation was with the jamindars, and these marginal small peasants, often in congruence with the landless agricultural laborers, they fought against the jamindars and landlords. So this was the character or nature of the traditional peasant movement or the earlier peasant movement of the 1940s, 50s, 60s. But from 1970s onwards, newer contradictions in the shape of newer I mean conflicts came up in Indian agrarian society, and farmers movement, they reflected these sort of contradictions or conflicts of the Indian agrarian society. The farmers movement basically is the outburst, often outburst of the middle peasant of and certain portion of the rich peasant against the state. Their adversary or the enemy is not the jamindars or the landlords of the earlier peasant movements. So that That's why some cross-section of the scholars, researchers and sociologists believe that farmers' movement has a basic disjuncture. Farmers' movement has a very fundamental difference with the earlier tradition of peasant movements in India. Now we should be very clear about the two terms, that is farmers and peasants. What are the distinctions? What are the fundamental differences between these two terms? Often there is a kind of, trend of thinking that the farmers and the peasants, these two are all the same. There is no difference between these terms, but we must be very careful, we must be very cautious about their analytical separatedness. Look, what is or what characterizes a peasant? A peasant is a poor smallholder or farm laborer of low social status. So he or she is a poor farm laborer of low social status, and the term peasant is used with reference to subsistence agriculture, not a very modern type of agriculture. It's a subsistence form of agriculture characterized or taking place mostly in the poorer countries. But what about the farmer? Farmer is a person who owns or manages a farm. He or she owns or manages a farm, so he or she is the owner. Unlike the peasant, who is a farm laborer or a very small holder, the farmer manages a farm. And while the peasant occupies the lower strata of the rural society, the farmer often occupies the upper strata of the rural society. So they are, quite distinct categories, although both of these categories are located in the agrarian sector, but they occupy very distinct social stratum. So that differentiates the two terms, and possibly on the basis of this difference, the two movements also differ, because the demands of the peasants and the demands of the farmers, they do not converge, often they diverge. So the movements also takes different shapes. So farmers movements and peasant movements, they often acquires different paths, different demands, different characteristics, different natures. That's why we are focusing on farmers movement exclusively here. Now I will try to look at or map the farmers movement or their organizations and leadership. Look, what are the basic organizations or what are the important organizations of the farmers movement? The first, maybe very important one, is the Shetkari Shangathan, led by Sharad Joshi in Maharashtra. The Shetkari Shangathana, led by Sharad Joshi in Maharashtra, farmers movement was very vibrant. And the next one, this is also very important, probably more important than any other states, that is the Bharatiya Kisan Union, BKU. It was led by M.S. Tikayat in Uttar Pradesh. And next, Ajmer Singh Lakhowal, Balbir Singh Rajwal, and Bhupinder Singh Mann in Punjab. They led the farmers movement in Punjab. Bharatiya Kisan Sangh in Gujarat, and Tamiliga Baiva Sabhabigal Sangham or TVS in Tamil Nadu, led by Narayanath Sami Naidu, and Karnataka Rajya Rayata Sangha or KRRS in Karnataka, led by MD Nanjundwa Swami. So these are the basic, most important organizations of the farmers movement and the leaders. So the location of the movement is very clear, that it is pan-Indian. Both in the north and in the south, the span was very extensive. So farmers movement, a kind of all India, pan-India affair. Now I will be focusing on some important demands, and going through the demands, we can be in a position to distinct the farmers movement with the earlier tradition of peasant movements. So what are the important demands of the farmers movement? First one, that is lower prices on farm inputs like seeds, fertilizers, pesticides. That is a typical farmer's demand, that we are using these farming inputs, and naturally we will be demanding lower prices for our inputs. Then lower tariffs on electricity and water, because these are also necessary conditions for a successful farming, that the prices or tariffs on electricity and water should be low. Then abolition of land revenue. If there is any provision of land revenue, that has to be abolished, and imposition of tax based only on output alone. So tax may be imposed, but that should be based on output alone. And then waiving of loans owed by the farmers exclusively to the government, because the government is supposed to protect the farmers' interest, so it should come up with policies for waiving loans of the farmers from the loans of the banks and cooperative societies. So all the loans should be waived. Then fixation of agricultural prices realistically. Realistically, what does it mean? That it has to be calculated keeping into consideration the input cost. So agricultural prices should be fixed by keeping into consideration the input cost, that how much a farmer is investing and how much he is getting out of that. So considering these two, the price of agricultural product has to be fixed. Then we are coming to some of the important features of farmers movement. So if we consider on the demands, we have got that farmers movement is a typically kind of middle or rich farmers case, because nowhere the landless laborers case has been taken up by the farmers organizations. So it's a typical demand of the middle, mostly middle and upper rung of the rural peasants or rural farmers. Then from this we will be just moving to the features, because these two will be linked. So the first important feature, and these features have been mentioned by Professor Dhanagare, and this the most important or the first feature as mentioned by Professor Dhanagare, that farmers movement is pan-Indian in scope. Pan-Indian means, just I have mentioned, that from north to south, save a certain portion of the east, say Kerala, West Bengal and some northeastern states, save these states, or apart from these states, farmers movements have their presence in almost all the states of India, starting from Punjab to Gujarat to Rajasthan to Tamil Nadu to Karnataka. Everywhere farmers movement started or gained momentum during 1970s, 1980s, continued to 1990s. So they have a pan-Indian scope. And then not only pan-Indian in scope, they have a very uniform form of demands. There is a kind of similarity in the demands raised by the farmers movement in different states. Say the cost-based agricultural price, lowering of say input prices, or fixing of farm products, or fixing of the price of farm products depending upon the cost of the inputs. So there were certain demands which were uniformly spread throughout the states, although the movements of Rajasthan, movement of Gujarat, movements of farmers in Punjab, or movements of farmers in Tamil Nadu, they have got certain internal differences. Say the movement of Punjab might have certain differences with the movements in Karnataka, but the thing is that this sort of uniformity in the demand was there. So that is the second major feature of the farmers movement in India. And third important feature is common strategies of agitation. So wherever the movement is taking place, it may be in Punjab, it may be in Haryana, it may be in Maharashtra, it may be in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, but certain common strategies of agitation have been there. First one is massive demonstrations. This is a typical movement strategy of many sort of movement, not only farmers movement, but farmers movement in different states of India also has taken recourse to this, that massive demonstrations. Rail and Rasta Roko, this is a kind of agitational form. Again, most of the movements, not only farmers movement, but many different types of movements, student movements or say ethnic movements, they often take recourse to this strategy, Rail and Rasta Roko. Then Gab Bandh, that is restricting the entry of the government officials into the villages. That is barring the entry, that you are not allowed to enter the villages because you are not doing what you are supposed to do for us. That is the demand of the farmers. So Gab Bandh and boycott of mandis, that the farmers are refusing to sell the farm products to the local markets. That is the boycott of mandis, that we will not sell our farm products to the to the nearby markets, local markets, so that there will be trouble. Then intellectual and charismatic leadership. First, the leaders of the farmers' movements were essentially farmers. This is one. But not only farmers. Their more important identity was that they were educated, often they were intellectual, and often they have a sort of charismatic qualities. So that in all the states, farmers' movements, they have a well-educated intellectual leadership. Not only they were able to agitate the masses, but they could explain the situation before the masses. They could explain the causes of the, suffering of the farmers. So in that way, farmers movement often gets differentiated from other movements in that farmers movements leadership, they often bear a kind of or possess a sort of charisma. So they attract the people by virtue of that. Now, this is a common place with the farmers movement that often scholars argue, both in India and abroad, that farmers movement, they have or bear important similarities with the new social movement. Now, this is an important arena of discussion, that what are new social movements, what are the basic features of new social movements, how does it get differentiated from the traditional movements or the quote-unquote old movements. So let us first concentrate on the new social movement theory, and then we will be trying to locate the similarities and of course the dissimilarities of the farmers movement with the new social movement. Look, careful consideration of the issues, as we have already done, concerns, values, modes of orientation or modes of participation or strategies of agitation of the movement have often led many scholars to identify it with the new social movements. So our question is, how far this farmers movement can be equated with the new social movement, or whether it can be equated or not. Then, so we are now moving straight on to the very basic arguments of new social movement theory. So in a new social movement, participants, those who participate in the new social movements, they do not seek to return to an undifferentiated community like say class or anything, undifferentiated community free of all power and all forms of inequality. So this is the very, important feature of social movement, and that makes it new, because often social movements do not have this sort of demands, or the participants do not have this sort of objectives. Second, the participants struggle in the name of autonomy. The issue is autonomy, plurality and difference. So they show their respect to difference, they show their respect to plurality while they seek autonomy. And next one, they stress upon the value of relativism. They relativize their own values and with respect to one another. So difference is normal. There should be difference. There should be differences of opinion. There should be differences of thinking, thought, etc. And they respect it because they emphasize the relativity, or they relativize their own values vis-a-vis others. They put more emphasis on the issues of culture. That is the crucial, determinant of new social movement, that the basic emphasis is on the point of culture and identity, not or more than class. Often it transcends the boundary of class and they enters the realm of culture, they enter the realm of say identity. So culture, identity is more important than class in new social movement, and of course in doing so they also accept the existence of democratic state and the market economy. So they are not against market economy, they are not against the state. So this is a sort of movement where the conflict is basically over certain post-materialist values. Post-materialist means that it is not materialist values like say economic demands or something else, it's post-materialist values. And so conflict over material resources is not that important in new social movement, or not at all important in new social movement. The basic conflict core is composed by the post-materialist values. So basically, the conflict is not located in the sphere of material reproduction, rather it is located in the sphere of cultural reproduction. So the conflict takes place in the sphere of culture, in the sphere of cultural reproduction, social integration, socialization, not in the sphere of material reproduction. And they are, I mean, the new social movements are manifested in sub-institutional level, extra parliamentary forms of protest, and basically they are non-party mobilization. So no political party is leading the movement. It is not a movement for, say, kind of political mileage or political gain or loss. It's a movement which basically is non-partisan. This is a movement which, or new social movements are basically non-party mobilization. Then often we say that certain categories are structurally determined. So like class or caste, they are structurally determined. New social movement theories believe that identities are not structurally determined, they are not givens. So what is identity, or how does it constructed? Identity is constructed during the course of the movement. So it is basically the movement which constructs identity, not that identities are participating in the movement. During the course of the movement, the identities of the participants are shaped, reshaped, redesigned, refashioned. So the thing is that new social movement is always in the process of unfolding, it is always in the process of making. Now, how far we can consider farmers movement as a new social movement, or whether at all we can consider it? So first let us concentrate on the similarities of the farmers movement with the new social movement thesis we have just mentioned. So what are the important similarities? First one is that the agency of the farmers movement is not with the peasants, the agency is with the farmers. That we have already mentioned in the very beginning of our discussion, that the farmers movement is led by the farmers, not by the peasants, and we have already discussed the differences between the term farmer and peasant. So we know that the farmers movement is led by the farmers, so the agency is not with the peasants. The farmers movement's agency is definitely with the farmers, or the middle or the upper section of the rural society. Then the focus of agitation has shifted from land to price. That is the important distinction between peasant movement and farmers movement, that always peasant movements, their demand or their focus was on the issue of land, but the farmers movement's demand has shifted from the issue of land to price, like remunerative price, or justified price for the farm products. So the issue or the conflict core is composed in the issue of price, not in the in land. Then it's also a non-party form of agitation. In most of the states, the organizations I have just mentioned, like Shetkari Sangathan or BKU in Maharashtra or Punjab respectively, most of the cases these organizations, they were non-party kind of form, or their agitation was also non-party form. Then certain distinctive and novel forms of agitation farmers movement have always employed. So what are those? I have just mentioned about Gabband, Rail and Rasta Roko, Dharna means demonstration, and I mean refusing to sell products into local markets, so that is boycott of mandis. So these are the novel methods of agitation which differentiates the farmers movement often with other forms of class movements, specifically peasant movements. Now, farmers movement often includes multiple traditions within its fold. Often farmers movement, they cater to the interest of the women's movement, often they cater to the interest of the environmentalist movements. So we often find existence of multiple traditions within the fold of the farmers movement. Now the existence of multiple, traditions brings the farmers movement very close to the orbit of new social movement. Now some more similarities of farmers movement with the new social movements. Look, the important one is that the enemy of the movement, or the conflict of the movement, or the adversary of the movement is not any internal agency. It is often external agency, like state or say industrial capital, international capital, urban area. So the basic struggle or the conflict is not within the rural society. The conflict is outside the rural society with certain external agencies like state or urban areas or industrial areas or industrial urban capital, international capital. So the struggle against external agencies, or basically the state, that the state versus the farmers. So it is not that the landless laborers, they are fighting against the jamindars, both in the, I mean, within the scope of the rural areas. The farmers are struggling against the state, the farmers are struggling against the urban areas. So that is the way that the enemy or the struggle is against certain external agencies. Then entire rural population, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, economic categories, political differences, are mobilized. So we or anybody or no one can characterize farmers movement with a singular dimension. Farmers movement is always multidimensional. We often find I mean, solidarity across the levels, the solidarity across the layers of farmers. So irrespective of caste, creed, religion, ethnicity, or class, farmers movement is a kind of total rural mobilization against certain external agencies. So large number of issues are addressed, large number of issues. We have mentioned only some important demands that we have mentioned here, but there are some more issues with which farmers movement have dealt. Now it wants to retrieve communitarian life. We the rural people, we should have autonomy, we should have this, we should have that. So this sort of communitarian life which they perceive has been endangered or has been jeopardized by the advent of external agencies, maybe the state, maybe the global capital or the international capital, anything. So this is quite crucial or very important dimension of farmers movement, which brings it very close to new social movement. Now organizational pattern is also that brings it close to new social movement, that it is anarchic. In that sense, it is postmodern, that no fixed sort of movement organizational pattern is there, no fixed sort of organizational character is there. So what is that? That organizational form is anarchic in the sense that it is postmodern, it stresses on difference, it stresses on freedom or autonomy. So it builds structures around actions rather than routine organization. The structures are built around action. It's no routine organizational work is there. So certain actions have to be performed. So we are assembled here and performing this. After we have finished the action, you may not have a trace of the organization. So that is the kind of flexibility, or that is, one may call it, anarchic. And then it is very ad hoc and flexible membership instead of fixed membership. Farmers movements organizations, their membership is very ad hoc and flexible. No fixed membership, no strict rules of organization, that somebody should be secretary, has to be, or there has to be a president, there has to be a local committee, or there has to be a sort of state committee. This is not the case with farmers movement. So no fixed rules of organization. For the action we have to perform, there is a kind of organization. Once the action is performed, the organization gets just diffused, and no strict ties between local, intermediate and top levels in organization. So organizational hierarchy is also not there, as it is ad hoc, as it is flexible. So there is no organizational, strict organizational hierarchy. Often there are certain persons with certain responsibilities, but that doesn't mean that there are organizational hierarchies. In fact, they often talk against organizational hierarchies, because this is a movement for the total rural emancipation. So the concept of hierarchy often is not there. And so what is the cardinal principle? Anybody who participates in the agitation is a member. So if you participate in any of the agitational program, you become a member. So there is no question of, say, very strict or very fixed sort of membership or fixed pattern of organization. Just if you participate in the agitation, you are a member. So that is a sort of flexible membership that farmers movement have, and it brings it very close to new social movement concept. Now, Farmers movement represent, therefore, we have considered that farmers movement represents the new politics. That is not the politics we know. That is not the sort of institutional politics with which we are accustomed. So farmers movement represents a new politics, and they occupy the non-institutional space, non-party platform. There is no partisan interest, no political part or no farmers organization is striving to say attain any electoral mileage or political power. They are for the farmers unity. They want the autonomy of the farmers. They want the self-respect for the farmers. Identity of the farmers has to be protected. So that is a sort of political or non-institutional space which the farmers movement occupies. So this brings it again very close to new social movement according to Habermas and Off. They all have talked that new social movements basically operate in the non-institutional space of politics, and this is new in this sense. And farmers movement also performs, or farmers movement also occupy this non-institutional, non-political space, and this brings it very close to new social movement. And exactly its orientation is non-class or post-class. So farmers movement, as I have already mentioned, that it transcends or it crosses the boundaries, all limits of class, caste, religion. So it is non-class, and so it is post-class also. This is again a difference, important difference with the peasant movement. That peasant movement is basically was with the question of class. The conflict was with the issue of class, but here the conflict is not with the issue of class. So it is, the basic orientation is not with class, it's with something else than class. It is beyond class or it is post class. And so the larger issue is farmer identity. That farmer identity has to be protected, that I have mentioned. That farmer identity is something that has been created during the course of the movement, and that has to be carried forward. It has to be protected and it has to be respected. So farmers movement, they often operate in this non-institutional, non-political platform, non-political, non-institutional space of politics. Now, as we are talking about identity so much, so ontologically, what are the basic constituents of this identity? What constitutes the farmer's identity? Or we will be asking, or we will be examining the ontology of the farmer's identity. So here, as our discussion is continuing, we can see that the basic ingredients of farmer's identity, or the basic essence of farmer's identity, lies within the structural binaries of two distinct categories. First one is rural versus urban. So it's a conflict of the rural versus the urban, and the identity of the farmers is located within that boundary, that rural versus urban. It is also located within the boundary of agricultural versus industry, or that means that the agricultural sector is in conflict with the industrial sector, or something similar like colonized versus colonialist. The farmer's identity ontologically is located within this boundary of colonized versus the colonialist, and again it is indigenous versus non-indigenous. And broadly, if we have a very broad notion of this, that is, the identity of the farmer ontologically is located within the binary of the East versus the West. So if we consider the famous slogan extended by Sharad Joshi, Bharat against India, that perfectly epitomizes or exhibits this sort of binary operation. That how Joshi conceptualizes Bharat against India, that is a basically conflicting configuration. Bharat against India means that he is locating Bharat against India. That means India, according to him, is more developed at the cost of the underdevelopment of the Bharat. So the farmers movement is the burst of the Bharat against India, we will be concentrating on this only, that Bharat against India, and what does Sharad Joshi mean by it. Look, Sharad Joshi means that notionally India has inherited from the British the mantle of or the I mean capability of economic, social, cultural and educational exploitation. So India, just the British, when the British left, they have shifted the mantle of economic, social, cultural and educational exploitation to the India. So this is a continuation of exploitation from the British to the India, quote unquote India. And what is Bharat? Bharat is being exploited for the second time ever since the termination of the external colonial regime. So we have got our independence, but that independence was of India's independence, not Bharat's, because after independence, Bharat is experiencing, or Bharat has been experiencing, a second form of exploitation, and that exploiters is no longer the Britishers. They have shifted the mantle to the Indians. Now black Britishers now have replaced the white ones. So he is terminating, or he is terming the Indians as black Britishers. So the black Britishers now, they have replaced the white ones. So the white ones, the Britishers, colonialists, they are no longer here, but the exploitation over Bharat is continuing. And the black Britishers, he is referring to the Indians. That Indians means that urban Indians, that industrial Indians, developed quote unquote Indians. So he is referring to these Indians who are now exploiting the Bharats, the rural areas, rural population, underdeveloped segment of Indian population. So basically, indigenous rural Bharat has become the colony of the urban India. That is the connotation which Joshi is trying to put forward through the configuration or composition of Bharat against India. And so simply he is invoking the internal colonialism thesis, that it is not colonialism but internal colonialism. Within a country, one segment is exploiting the other segment. So the India, or the urban or the industrial segment of India, is exploiting the rural or the agricultural sector. So that is India against Bharat, or Bharat against India. So Joshi is locating the farmer's identity within this binary of Bharat against India. So it is clear that the issue is not with class, the issue is with identity of Bharat. And the farmer's identity has a very necessary connection with the overall situation, social situation, economic situation of Bharat. So according to Joshi, the basic contradiction, Sharad Joshi of Shetkari Sangathan Maharashtra, the basic contradiction is not in the village. So as I have already mentioned, that the adversary is not within the village, it is certain external agency. So Joshi is also of the same opinion, that the basic contradiction is not in the village. It is not between big peasants and small. So that is not the case of peasant movement. Farmers movement is not similar with peasant movements. It is emphatically mentioned by Joshi that the contradiction of farmers movement is not between big peasants and small peasants. We have to keep it in mind that this contradiction between big peasants and small peasants happens to be the basic contradiction of the peasant movement. But the farmers movement have certain newer kind of contradictions, have certain newer features. So the contradiction or the basic contradiction, as Joshi says, is not between big peasants and small, not between landowners and landless, as much like the peasant movements, where the basic contradiction was between the landowners and landless. In farmers movement, the contradiction is not between landowners and landless, but between the agrarian population as a whole and the rest of the society. So the contradiction is between the agrarian population as a whole. That is Bharat against India, agriculture versus say industry, rural versus urban. So the contradiction is basically between the agrarian population as a whole and the rest of the society. And similarly, Tikayat in Punjab is also of the same opinion that the Kishan identity, it subsumes a full range of identities of caste, clan, community and class. So all the caste, all the clans, all communities, all religions, they are subsumed under the umbrella category of Kishan in Tikayat's view. So identity or the issue of identity is more important than the issue of class in farmers movement. Now, if we turn on to a colonialist standpoint, so what we can learn from it, that construction of farmer identity is informed by the development discourse. Development discourse informs construction of farmer identity. Now, what is the implication of this? So, as I have mentioned, the similarities of the farmers movement with the new social movements. Now there are certain important differences of farmers movement with the new social movement. Look, some segment of the scholars or critics, they argue that farmers movement, much like the peasant mobilization, is a kind of rich peasant movement. So the issue of class is always there, because the issue of kulak or rich peasant mobilization is there. So it's a rich peasant mobilization. So the issue of class is here in a different form, although not in a typical similar manner with the peasant movement. In farmers movement, land has always been an agenda of the movement. Now, so the agitational methods, as we have mentioned about the dharnas, government or boycott of mandis, they are not certain unique novel methods that the farmers movement have employed. In fact, some peasant movements or some, women's movement or women in the anti-famine agitations in Maharashtra and others, they have already employed this sort of techniques. So these are again not new. So ideology of the farmers movement, they often exhibit agrarian populism. They are the basic character of, agrarian populism is the basic character of peasant movements. So nothing new about it. So the ideology, the agitational methods, or the demands, or the contradiction, conflict code, they are nothing new about it. Critics are arguing in this fashion. So often we are talking about non-political, non-institutional space occupied by the farmers movement. That is also being challenged, because often farmers movement organizations have extended their supports to many political parties without any consideration of their ideological standpoints. So as they have extended support to the political parties, and even Sharad Joshi formed a party, like the name was Swatantra Bharat Party in 1994, which even contested elections. So the claim of non-politics, the claim of non-political mobilization is also not not finds very well, deep support. Then farmers' identity is a contradictory identity, because although Tikayat or Joshi is talking about that the farmers' identity is transcending the boundaries of class, caste, religion, gender, but often the identity of farmers have failed to cross the limit of gender, class and religion. So it is a kind of contradictory unity that is the farmer identity is not a kind of very flat homogeneous identity. It is always contested. There have been gender differences, there have been caste differences, there have been caste differences within the farmer. So the farmers movement, if we take a very overall view of the movement, whether it is new or not, there are certain points favoring is the claim of new social movement, there are points against it. But the thing is that the farmers movement exposes a newer kind of configuration which is emerging in the Indian agrarian sector, and the source of this change in the Indian agrarian sector is basically twofold. First, the introduction of the green revolution technologies in the 1960s, and then adoption of the economic reform strategies in India, that is characterized by liberalization, privatization and globalization, and during the 1990s. So these two have brought Indian agriculture into a point of crisis, removal of subsidies or withdrawal of, say, government from core areas of, say, public services. So that are the newer contradictions, newer configurations, newer form of contradictions that have been emerging in the agrarian sector, and farmers movement simply reflect this. So whether it is new or not, that it is a sort of newer contradictions that have been reflected by farmers movement, that is certain. Thank you.